Electricast.
I'm not giving up.
I am selling the building.
The final season of FX's The Bear.
The restaurant is flooded.
Everything's either going to be okay.
No, stop!
Or not.
We are outgunned and we are outmanned, but we have each other.
FX's The Bear, the final season. All episodes now streaming on Disney+.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and all month long, I've been talking about what it means to build an extraordinary life with my guests and my solo episodes. And the more I've been sitting with that phrase, building an extraordinary life, the more I've been thinking about how easy it is to turn extraordinary into one specific picture, like the successful business or the beautiful home, the income, the freedom, the vacations, the family life, the kind of life that makes other people envy the life you've built. And listen, none of those things are wrong to want or to achieve. But what I've been thinking about and wondering is, what happens when we start measuring our lives against a version of extraordinary that may not even be what we actually want? Because building an extraordinary life can sound like this big polished thing, right? Like there's this model that we're supposed to follow, a specific type of framework, a certain kind of success formula that we're supposed to want, a certain way our life is supposed to look like. But honestly, I don't believe that extraordinary is one fixed thing or one fixed idea. Because what if your values change and your life goals change and what you want to build changes? And what if you're in a season of life where what you've built no longer feels satisfying? Like you can feel like you're built for something more, something bigger, something that has a deeper meaning, one where your vision of impact has gotten bigger. And if that's the case, could that mean that the question simply is, does the life I'm building still fit the life I actually want to live? And that's kind of what's shown up for me this month as my guest episodes have aired. And then as I sat down to create and record my own solo episodes. And the funny thing is that I had no idea that this idea of extraordinary life would even hit me the way that it has, because I wasn't even truly knowing what I was going to talk about myself for this series until like this time of the year. Like I didn't really know until I found myself at my own crossroads of what extraordinary means to me. And so I want to lean into the possibility that when we think of what it means to build an extraordinary life, that it isn't what the world says it is or what others think it should be for you, but what actually fits what you want, how you feel, the impact that you want to make, your legacy, right? And that's why I believe that this conversation for me is so much more personal than maybe I've even allowed myself to think it was. And that's what that's really what I feel like this month has shown for me. Because through my guest conversations, I kept seeing the same threads show up in different ways. Not the same life path or the same definition of extraordinary, but closer to the same deeper question, lying underneath the idea, where you wonder if the life that you're building actually supports the life you actually want to live. And so if you've listened to the series for this month with my guests, one conversation brought me into the idea of career and what happens when the first version of your career wasn't wrong, but maybe it just wasn't the whole story, Because sometimes the work you've been doing for years has given you experience inside the working environment, but also life experience as well, right? It gave you the skill sets. It gave you credibility, a life. But at the same time, when you find yourself questioning, is this all there is for me? That's what I found myself questioning back in 2017. maybe one day you start to realize that the version of you who built that life may not be the same version of you who wants to keep living that life. And then there was that conversation with one of my guests who talked about how our home is so much more than a place that we live. And I truly believe that. That it's not just a house or a beautiful space, but it's actually a reflection of how you're actually living. Because you can have a beautiful space, right? And you can still feel like something just doesn't sit right. Like it just doesn't fit the person that you are now. You can even walk through the front door and you can know instinctively, even before you have the words for it, that the space around you is telling you something, that it actually feels like a sense of belonging, that there's good energy, there's good flow, or that it doesn't. And then most recently, my most recent guest episode from last week really stayed with me because for me, it models what, both sides of building an extraordinary life at the same time, like in who you are, what you do, right? Like the people that you serve. Where like on one side, there's the business owner building her business, serving her clients, navigating life daily with her ideas, her offers, her content, her systems, all of that, right? And even though she can do it herself, it doesn't mean that she should have to keep doing it all by herself, right? I think there's this idea, unfortunately, I think a lot of it is maybe the control piece. Oh, I don't think someone else can do it the way I do it. And of course, they're not going to always do it exactly the way you do it. They're going to obviously have some model of how to do it, but they might do it better, right? But at some point, support isn't just about getting tasks off your plate. It's what gives you your life room to think, room to create, room to serve, room to actually sit down at dinner with your family, being truly present without still mentally sorting through what didn't get done. And what I truly loved about that conversation was that it wasn't only about the business owner. It was also about the person on the other side of the table, the VA, whether it's the bookkeeper VA, the podcast VA, marketing VA, whoever that is, the person whose skill sets, their care and their work may be helping her build her own extraordinary life too, where her superpower as the VA, wherever her support lands in supporting the business owner, that helps her as the VA to support her own family, giving her opportunities that may not have been available to her, to give her income and letting her use something she's good at in a way that matters. And I keep thinking about that, how extraordinary lives can be built on both sides of the table. The woman receiving support and the woman who's giving the support, right? The business owner getting more space and the woman who's doing meaningful work that helps her build something for herself too. And that to me is what made this month feel so rich and so special, because it reminded me that extraordinary doesn't belong to one kind of woman or one kind of business or one kind of income or one kind of home, one kind of career, one kind of framework, one kind of model. I think that really matters too, because you can admire someone else's life. You can look at what they've built and think that it's beautiful, and you can respect their choices, even feel inspired by them. But it doesn't automatically mean that their vision of extraordinary is supposed to become your vision of extraordinary. Because maybe her extraordinary life includes the big house, but maybe yours doesn't. Maybe her extraordinary life includes scaling her company to multi-seven figures, but yours is smaller, more steady six-figure business. Doing that because you framed it the way you did, it lets you pick up your children from school without feeling like you're choosing between your work and your family. Now, her extraordinary life could include traveling every month, but maybe the life that you envision includes one quiet morning every single week where nobody needs anything from you before 10 a.m. And for me, this month made me think even more deeply about my own life too. The coaching business I'm building, my podcasts, the Faceless and Nameless virtual gatherings that I'm creating, the collaborations that I'm working with, and the work I feel called to do with the clients I'm working with. And that question, the question that keeps coming up for me around quality of life isn't just what I'm building, but what is this that I'm building making room for? Because I don't think building an extraordinary life is about chasing someone else's picture of it. I think it begins with being honest about the life that would actually feel true for you. And maybe that's why this conversation is so important to me, because extraordinary doesn't belong to one kind of life. That's what I truly believe. And that's where I want to take the conversation today, because I think it's worth exploring the way we define extraordinary in the first place. Because I know that it can be so easy to borrow a picture of success from someone else without realizing that we've done it. The house, the income, the business other people admire, the vacations, the visible proof that life's working. And again, none of that is wrong. But sometimes you can look at someone else's life and admire it, respect it, even be inspired by it, and still need to ask yourself, is that actually what I want, right? Because it's one thing to admire someone else's life, and it's another thing entirely to build your own around someone else's vision. And so that's why I really wanted to bring this conversation today. And I also want to talk about quality of life, your actual lifestyle, what your Tuesday feels like, what your calendar keeps making room for, who gets the best of your energy, what still has access to you at the end of your days, who has access to you at the end of your days, what you keep saying matters, but somehow keeps getting pushed to later. Because sometimes it's not about whether you're successful or not. It's about, do you have room to experience the life that you keep working so hard to build? And then I want to talk about the life that once made sense, meaning maybe you're at a crossroads right now and you're reflecting on your career or your business, the role that you hold, the responsibilities that are on your plate, the way that you learned to be dependable around the thing that's helped you to build what you have now. Because there's parts of our lives that have supported us for a very long time. They've helped us feel secure, to become capable. They've helped us carry what needed to be carried. And still, there may come a moment in your life where you start to wonder whether that same part of your life is supposed to remain at the center of it, right? Like whether that choice, that vision that you once had that you've been living is still the vision that you have for yourself. And it's not because you need to make it wrong or even to think that it was a mistake or that you have to dismiss what it gave you, but more like because the life that you're building now or you want to step into, it might be asking a different question from you than the one you answered years ago. So today, I want to sit with that. Not to define extraordinary for you or to hand you a model to follow, because again, I don't think there's one framework. We're individual for a reason. I think that's beautiful. We should actually lean into that. More so, I want to look at what happens when the life that you admire, the life you've built, the life you actually want to live, that those are not always automatically the same thing. I think one of the patterns that can make this really hard to notice is so many of us have been handed a picture of what success looks like, right? What extraordinary is supposed to look like before we've even had the chance to ask what it actually means for us. Because when we look at other people who are successful on paper and we see the house, we see the business, we see their title, their income, maybe the trips that they're taking, because that's what we see all over social media. They're sharing their life. And we believe that that's the kind of life other people respond to. If we buy into the idea of what extraordinary is supposed to look like, and I say that with air quotes before we even realize it, that's where how do we start to measure our life, our success against a picture that we may not even have yet fully chosen for ourselves. And it's not always because we're trying to copy someone else, but because we live in a world where some versions of success are praised so often that they start to feel like that's the standard. You see, anyone can announce a milestone, right? They can show they have the home, that they have a successful launch, that they're part of what is deemed to be maybe the circles to be a part of, to be a part of, like being in the, where air quotes, right rooms. You see the way other people maybe respond to what this woman, maybe she's a role model for you. They respond to what she's built. And somewhere inside that question that starts to form is that success? Is that what I'm supposed to want? And maybe you do. Maybe you really do want the bigger home. Maybe you do want the larger company, the higher income, the traveling, the visibility, the full calendar of beautiful things. And if that's true for you, then that's true for you. But I think the part we don't always stop long enough to ask ourselves is whether or not we want those things because they belong to us or because they've become the easiest way to prove that our life is working. Because there's a difference between wanting something because it feels true and wanting it because it makes your life look like it's working from the outside. And that's where it can get complicated, right? Because you might have already built something solid, an amazing career, a business that people respect, a family dynamic that other people from the outside looking in feels it looks like to them, it looks like the standard to model. You might have a role that's giving you stability, a life that makes sense on paper. And when something makes sense, it can feel that much harder to question because then you're not only asking, do I want something different? You're also asking, what does it say about me if I want something different when this has already given me so much? And am I being grateful? People would literally love to be in my position. You know what I mean? And that's what I think many of us, many women, if they feel this way, that it can feel very uncomfortable to admit because if a life looks successful, stable, responsible, meaningful, and then part of you may think you shouldn't keep asking questions about it and that you shouldn't want more. And of course, we know how that has us doing, right? It has us shitting all over ourselves and alwaysing ourselves, saying we should be grateful. We should be happy with what we have. We're always thinking that we need more. And there's nothing wrong to wanting more. It's almost like you feel you should just be grateful, that you should just keep going, that you should not want too much, that you shouldn't need the definition of extraordinary to change for you. But I think that that's one of the places where we can lose touch with our own truth, because we start asking whether our life measures up before we ask whether it fits, because we change. As we grow and as we experience life, we change. That's just life. And somewhere in the middle of life, it's like we stop asking ourselves, what do we really want? Like, what do I really want? Like, it's wrong somehow to want change or to want more. Because listen, an extraordinary life can be admired by other people and still not be the life that feels right for you. And a life that looks like ordinary to someone else might be the exact life that feels deeply honest to the woman living it, that's her extraordinary. That's why I don't think the conversation is really about whether we should want more or less. I think it's about whether we've been honest with ourselves about what more or less actually means to ourselves, like to us. Because sometimes more is more income. Sometimes more is more space. Sometimes more is more time with your family. Sometimes more is a business that stays small enough for you to still have your evenings free. Sometimes more is a home that doesn't impress anyone else, but it feels like you can exhale every time you walk through the door. And sometimes the life you're tempted to measure yourself against it's not necessarily that it's wrong. It might be very beautiful, inspiring, meaningful, exactly right for her, the person that you admire. But that doesn't automatically make her life the life you're here to build. Because it's one thing for life to make sense. It's another thing entirely to keep living inside what it asks from you every day. And I don't mean that in an everything is falling apart kind of way. I mean, for me, building your life around how you fill your calendar before you've had time to ask what you want your week to feel like first. It's where you wake up, you do what needs to get done, handling what needs to be handled, and on paper, everything makes sense. But then there's that moment at the end of the day when you realize that although your life received your effort, it didn't really receive much of your presence. You kept the day moving, but you didn't really get to live inside it and really to enjoy it. And joy should be part of every single day. And that's different, right? Because when we don't experience it, no one else can see that. No one else knows that you might have started asking yourself whether the life you're living and the way you're living is the way that you want to keep living your life, right? No one else knows that you're proud of what you've built, but that you're still tired of how much of your energy it takes to maintain it. And listen, the life you're questioning doesn't have to be a bad life. It could be beautiful, it's a beautiful life that you built and once brought you so much joy, but now you want different, you want more, and that's okay. I mean, isn't that okay? Because maybe you want a life that gives you options and that the life you build helped you become steady. It helped you prove to yourself that you could build something. But I don't think that it's wrong if that changes because like I say, as we go through and experience our lives, things change and so do we. So when you start noticing that your life no longer feels like it's the full answer, you may not know what to do with that, right? Because it's easier to question. And that's where I found myself, right? Because it's easier to question a life that's clearly stopped working. We know that. But it's so much harder to question a life that still makes so much sense on paper. And I think that's where we start to edit ourselves before we ever say the truth out loud. We tell ourselves, this is not really a problem. Other people would be grateful for what I have. I worked hard to get here. Why am I even questioning this? Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I should wait until I feel clearer. Maybe this is just what this season of life is showing for me. And if we let it, it gets pushed down again. Not gone, just pushed down until it shows up in another ordinary moment where when you look at your calendar one day and you realize almost every hour already belongs to something else and to someone else. When you think about calling a friend and you realize you're calculating whether you have enough energy for the conversation, sending coffee chat links to actually catch up with a friend, having to put it on your calendar because your days are so full now, you don't remember the last time a day felt spacious enough to breathe inside of it. When you say you want more time with your family, but your days keep being built around everything else first, or when you finally get a free hour and you don't even know what to do with it because your body's still catching up to the pace you've been keeping. And maybe that's information worth listening to. I believe so, because you can become really good at creating a life that functions, but functioning is not the same as fit. A life can function, your bills can be paid, your work can be done, your business can be growing, your home can look beautiful, your family can be cared for, your calendar can be full, your responsibilities can be handled. But somewhere inside your day, you can still feel the absence of yourself. And that's because so much of your life has been organized around what has to be done, what needs to be maintained, what makes sense, what keeps everything steady, what other people can easily understand. And there may not be much room left for the things that make your life feel like yours. And sometimes what you miss isn't some big traumatic thing either. It's sitting down to dinner without your mind still trying to finish the day, having a free hour that actually feels like yours, starting the morning without already feeling behind. And I want to be clear, this isn't about making ambition wrong or about making money wrong or about making the idea of a bigger lifestyle wrong. It's about being honest when the life you've built keeps requiring more of you than you want to keep giving. And you want something different because you're at this crossroads where you believe something needs to change. You see, I believe that your life was never meant to be measured by what you can keep carrying, because sometimes what happens is a series of small delays that keep you accepting because they make sense in the moment, right? Later, after this season, after this launch, after this client, after this payment comes in, after the kids are older, after the house is settled, after work calms down, after you've earned enough room to want what you want. But then later becomes part of the way you live. And you keep telling yourself there'll be a better time to ask the bigger questions. But the life you're living now is still being built every day, right? With every yes, every calendar decision, every role that you keep carrying because you've always carried it, every responsibility that remains at the center of your life that leaves little room to be you just because it's been there for so long. And sometimes the very things that help you build your life are the same things taking up the room you now need for the life you want to live. The career maybe that gave you stability may also be taking the hours away that you want for something else. The business that you once dreamed about may have become a place where you recreated the same pressure that you were trying to leave. The home that looked like the next right step might not support the way you actually move through your days. It doesn't give you joy when you walk through the front door. The role that made you feel useful, the leadership role, maybe a position in a company, you have a really great title. Maybe that made you feel useful at one time, but now this role that you have may be asking for more access to you than you want to keep giving. And again, none of that makes your life wrong. It just simply makes the question harder to ignore. Because at some point, it's not, does this life work? It's, what does it keep requiring from you in order to keep working? And if the answer is your time, your energy, your attention, your presence, your creativity, your ability to experience the ordinary parts of your own life, then that deserves to be named. It deserves to be acknowledged, because the cost of a life that no longer fully fits isn't always that it looks wrong. Sometimes it's that it looks right enough for you to keep overriding the part of you that knows something needs to be reconsidered. And that's a very different kind of honesty, whether you're still willing to keep building around the same definition. Because once you start thinking about that, then the old picture can start to lose a little of its authority, right? Where you can begin to notice that the life you've been measuring yourself by may not be the same life you actually want to continue, pursuing. And I think that's why, for me, for so long, the question has been, what does an extraordinary life look like? I've been thinking a lot about that. And I know that question can take you in a lot of directions. Like, it can take you towards what photographs well, what sounds impressive, what makes sense in a bio, what people congratulate, what looks like the next level of success, what feels easy to explain when someone asks what you do, where you live, what you've built, or what you're working towards. But to me, I believe there's another question that's equally important, if not more. And that's, what does this feel like to live when you wake up every day, when you move through the rooms of your home even, when you open your calendar, when you sit down to work, when you look around at the end of your day and you ask yourself whether you were actually in your life or just moving through the motions, just responsible, again, for just keeping it moving. Because a life can look like progress and still not feel like you're present in it. And a life can look full and still not feel full in the way you thought it would. It can look impressive and still require so much maintenance that you barely have room to enjoy what it was supposed to give you, what you had desired for. And maybe this is the place where that definition can change. Not because the old definition of what you thought was what you wanted, it was wrong, because that's what you wanted, right? At that time of your life, you wanted that. You built your life around where you're at, what brought you to this crossroads. But your actual life today might be telling you a truth in ways that picture of what you thought you wanted never could. That picture of what you thought It can't tell you how your body feels when Sunday night comes around, right? It can't tell you whether your home supports the way you really live. It can't tell you whether your work receives your best energy or simply gets the first claim on it. It can't tell you whether the people closest to you are getting the best version of you that you said mattered most. That picture can only show what can be seen, right? Can be seen by others. That can be seen by you when you look at what your day looks like. Your life can tell you only what's being lived. And I think that's the difference. Because when you start to pay attention to how your life feels from the inside, certain things can become harder to dismiss. Like the meeting that used to feel like a sign of growth, it now feels like more and more a place you have to split yourself, split yourself in two. Because now you're like, oh my gosh, I have this to do, but I committed to this hour. The house that once felt like the dream now asks for a kind of upkeep that your life no longer has space for because maybe it's just too big. Maybe you're an empty nester and your kids have moved out. They're beyond college. They've moved out and you don't need this big space anymore. Maybe downsizing is what you want. Maybe the business you wanted so badly now needs a way of being held that doesn't keep pulling you away from the reason that you started it. And the role maybe that you had, the title that made you feel so proud now feels too small for the woman who has been changing behind the scenes. And none of that means that you failed. It means that you're just listening differently. In those moments when you stop asking only whether something looks successful and you start asking whether it still belongs in the center of your life. And that can feel uncomfortable because it doesn't always arrive with a clean answer, right? Sometimes it arrives when you're doing something very ordinary, like driving home, walking your dog, folding laundry, looking at a calendar that technically works because you put everything on there, sitting in a beautiful space that still doesn't feel like home to you, opening the email you know how to answer while still feeling the small pull of the work that you wish you had more room for. And in that moment, you might not even know what needs to change. You might only know that the way you've been measuring your life doesn't feel complete anymore. Because for you, maybe extraordinary isn't the picture. Maybe it's the fit between your work and your energy, the fit between your home and your nervous system, the fit between your calendar and your actual life, the fit between what you're building and what you want to be present for, the fit between the woman people know you to be and the woman you're becoming when no one's watching. And I think that's why this conversation for me isn't about making your life smaller. It's not about making it bigger either. It's about telling the truth about the size, shape, rhythm, and meaning of the life that actually fits you now, like for what you want now, the season of life that you find yourself in. Because maybe the life that fits you now doesn't require a bigger house. Like I said, you could be an empty nester and why do you need all this space, right? You're looking around and you're thinking, I don't need all of this. Maybe it requires a home where you can breathe when you walk through the door and it just feels like this is home to me. Maybe it doesn't require a larger business. Maybe it requires a business that doesn't turn you into the employee of your own pressure. Maybe it doesn't require a title that makes other people understand your worth faster, right? You don't have to have CEO or whatever that is. And I'm not saying those titles are bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that maybe your life that you want doesn't require you to actually lean on a title that makes other people understand your worth, right? Because sometimes we look at that and think titles make us look impressive. Maybe it requires work that doesn't ask you to hide so much of yourself in order to keep doing it. And maybe it doesn't require being available for everything, for everyone, all of the time. Maybe it requires enough room in your day to know what you think before the next person needs something from you. Actually serving yourself, taking care of you first to see what do you need? Because I think we override ourselves so much. And maybe that's the part many of us have not been invited to consider. That extraordinary isn't always adding more. It's not always about taking a lot away, but it's not about always adding more. Sometimes it's about noticing what's been taking up so much room, right? Maybe too much room. Not because what it is bad, because again, you've built your life to this point, but now you're starting to question it. And listen, something can be valuable and still no longer belong at the center. That something could have helped you build, whatever that is, build your life to where it is now and still not be what your life is organized around for the next season of your life. It can be respected by others and still not feel honest enough to you to keep choosing in the same way. And I think this is why the June conversations have stayed with me. Because each one carried a different doorway into this larger idea of career, home, support, business, money, service, freedom, quality of life different women, different stories, different work, different definitions. And yet underneath all of it, there was this same thread that the life we build has to be connected to the life we actually want to live. Not the life we imagined 10 years ago and we never revisited. Not the life someone else modeled for us. Not the life that earns the easiest approval. Not the life that makes us look like we made the right choices, but the life that we actually want, the life we're actually living, and the life maybe that we want to move into. The one with the real, like we have to look at what we actually are doing right now, noticing the life that we're living right now. The one that has the calendar, the real responsibilities of our life, the real energy that we spend, the real relationships that we have, our desires, our real desires, the real season of life that we're in, because your extraordinary life isn't built in theory. It's built in the way your Tuesday is shaped, right? Maybe your Tuesdays are your days for podcast recordings. Like mine are usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's how I built my podcast recordings around. Maybe your season of life is built and who has access to your attention after 5 p.m. Like maybe it's like, or maybe after 4 p.m. And it's like, nope, family time starts at 4. And between 4 and 7, nobody gets a piece of that because I'm with my kids. I'm helping them with their homework. We're having dinner as a family. We're having our conversations. I get the kids ready for bed. And then at 7, I'm now on to other things. And I have like a space of, say, from 7 to 9 p.m. That is with my significant other, or is my wind down time, whatever that looks like. It's built in whether your work gives you room to live or only room to produce, right? It's built in whether your home supports the person you are now, not only the version of you who chose it, right? Because sometimes, again, you could live in a home that just you thought was the right fit, but maybe it just doesn't feel like it anymore. It's built in the small decisions that keep confirming what your life is allowed to make room for. And that's where I think we can become more honest. We can stop asking whether our life looks right, and we can begin noticing where it feels true. Now, that doesn't mean that every part feels easy. It doesn't mean that every part's settled, or, it doesn't mean that you'll know exactly what comes next. It just simply means that the way you measure your life changes from image to fit, from applause to honesty, from achievement alone to the quality of life inside the achievement. And that can change how you hear your own restlessness, because maybe the part of you asking questions isn't being difficult. In fact, it's not, I don't believe. Maybe it's not dismissing what you've built. Maybe it's not trying to create a problem where there isn't one. Maybe it's just responding to something that your life has been showing you for a while now, and you've kind of just been glossing over it. That the definition you've been living from needs to be looked at again, to be revisited. And I think there's something powerful about letting that be true without needing to defend it immediately, without rushing to explain it, without turning it into a plan before you've even allowed yourself to hear it. Because sometimes the first move isn't external, it's internal, I believe. It's the moment that you stop asking yourself, would someone else call this extraordinary? And you actually ask yourself, does this feel like I can recognize a life that I can recognize as mine? That question doesn't make your ambition smaller or less meaningful, and it doesn't erase the years that you've spent building what you have right now. It just brings you back into the conversation. And maybe that's what's been missing, right? Maybe the part that's been missing is yourself inside the life that you're building, like thinking about it, not as an afterthought, not as a person who keeps everything moving, or the one who gets to enjoy it later, but the person who has to live here now, in this life, in this season, in your body, with the responsibilities that you carry, with your desires, with the knowing that something in the definition is ready to be more honest. And extraordinary, maybe it begins to feel different for you when it's no longer something you're trying to prove, and it begins to feel more like a life that you can actually inhabit. A life that doesn't need to match hers, the person that you admired, or theirs, the people, your neighbors, you watch them and they got a brand new car and they've upgraded their house, or the version of you that you once thought you were supposed to want because you see all over social media, this is what is measured as success. But a life that can be built from truth of what matters now, not because someone else would understand it immediately, because it's not about them. It's about you. You understand. If this is where you find yourself, because this is where I found myself, and if you've listened to my solo episodes, I found myself at this crossroads believing that at one point I thought that I had to make one side of the coin wrong in order for myself to be able to choose and make the other side right. Like the known piece of stability, making that right so that I can make the unknown choice of not knowing how to create that stability, security, making that wrong and making myself wrong for wanting it. Instead, understanding that both sides of the coin are true and that they're just telling me different truths, and allowing myself to look at those bigger pictures, and then being able to say, well, if I was able to build stability here, why can't I build it here? And looking at the how. This is because right now I'm looking at the how to get that what, which is how do I build that stability piece in so that I have that security in the unknown space that I'm looking to step into. So maybe this is what you sit with this week. What does an extraordinary life mean to you when no one else is defining it? Not the version that sounds good to other people or that makes sense to explain or that someone else would immediately understand. It's not about anyone else. It's about you. What does it mean when you stop borrowing the picture? When you stop measuring your life against the woman whose season of life, her responsibilities, her desires, family resources, work, health, and capacity doesn't match yours really? Maybe the question isn't only what do you want your life to look like? Maybe the question is, what do you want your life to feel like on an ordinary day? What do you want your morning to feel like before the world starts asking for you? What do you want your work to feel like when you sit down to do it? Like that passion, that desire to really make that impact. What do you want your home to feel like when you walk through the front door? How do you want to feel at the end of your days? What do you want your relationships to feel like when you're not giving them what's left of you? And maybe, even more honestly, what have you already built that's still working, but it doesn't feel like the full truth anymore? Because sometimes that's the harder question. Not what's wrong or what needs to be fixed or what needs to be changed by tomorrow, but what have you stopped questioning because it still is functioning, right? The schedule that works but leaves very little room for you. The role that makes sense, right? But keeps asking for a version of you that feels smaller than who you are now. Like maybe it just doesn't fit the version of you that you've grown into. The business rhythm that keeps moving, but it doesn't leave enough space for the life you said you wanted it to support. The home that holds your things. It doesn't quite hold who you are becoming. It just doesn't feel like home to you. The responsibilities that you keep carrying because you've carried them for so long that no one, including you, has asked whether it still belongs in the same place. And what have you been calling responsible that might actually be familiar? That one there might take a minute because there's things that we call responsibility because they sound mature, they sound steady, they sound like the right thing to do. And sometimes they are, of course. But sometimes responsibility becomes the word we use when we don't want to admit that we're afraid to want something different. So I want you to sit with that. Where have you been saying this is just the way it is when the more honest thing to say would be, this is the way I've learned to keep it. And again, not to judge it, not to make yourself wrong for it, just for you to hear it, to get honest with yourself so you can know what you're working with. Because maybe your habits have been telling you something, the way that you keep postponing the thing that you say matters for you, the way that you fill the open space before it has ever had a chance to become yours, the way you answer the easy obligation before you ask the honest question of like, is this actually mine to do? Is this actually a fit? Is this going to take away valuable time and energy that I need for something else? The way you keep making room for what's expected of you, and then you wonder why what you desire always feels like it has to wait. What's your life making room for without you having to think about it? And what does your life only make room for when everything else has already been handled? Because that answer may tell you more than you expect. Because your life has a pattern. Your calendar has a pattern. Every yes you say has a pattern. Your energy, how you use it, has a pattern. And sometimes those patterns can tell you truths before you're ready to say it out loud. So maybe this week, instead of asking whether your life is impressive enough, ask whether it feels honest enough. And ask yourself, what version of success have I been borrowing, maybe borrowing from someone else or society? What part of your life are you still building because it once made sense? And what would feel extraordinary, even if no one else applauded it? What would feel extraordinary for you? What do you keep saying you want more room for, right? That's what I'm asking. In essence, what are you saying that you want more room for, but you're continuing to build your days around everything else? And maybe the question I want you most to sit with is, if no one else got to define extraordinary for you, what would your life finally be allowed to include? And if that question brings something up for you, I want you to know that that's part of why I'm creating the Faceless and Nameless Gatherings, the virtual gatherings, because I think these are conversations that we carry, right? And I feel like sometimes we don't need advice. Sometimes we don't need someone to say, oh, this is what you should do. or someone to fix a sentence before we even finish saying it, right? Sometimes we just need a place where we can just tell our truths about what we're building, what we're questioning, how we're feeling, what we're carrying, like what we're wanting. And the truth, and maybe the truth is that you've built a good life, but maybe you're just feeling like it just doesn't fully fit you anymore. Or I admire what she has, but I'm realizing I may not want the same thing. Or I don't know what extraordinary even means for me, but I know I'm tired of borrowing someone else's definition of extraordinary. That's the kind of conversations that the Faceless and Nameless Gatherings are being created for. Not to perform a version of you that has to be polished or perfect or all put together. Not to prove your worth or to prove that you know what you're doing or know, you've built a successful life. Not to lead, again, it's no names, no faces, no titles. So you wouldn't be leading with your name. You wouldn't be leading with the role that you have maybe created and been living for these past several decades, for example. Instead, it's where you come into the small, intimate space where the conversation just gets to be honest before, beyond being polished. It just gets to be honest. So the first gathering I have decided on a date is Thursday, July 23rd. I'm keeping it small because I don't want this to feel like a room where you disappear into the number of people attending. I want it to actually to feel personal, intentional, spacious enough for real conversation. So if you'd like to be part of the first gathering, or to be added to the list for a future one, you'll find my email in the show notes. Just send me an email with yes to the gatherings. I'll add you to the list and reach out to you with further details. Please let me know if this is something that you are looking forward to. I definitely would need to know as soon as possible because I would need to get you registered. You'd need to register. So as I said, July 23rd, it's a Thursday. The time I'm looking at is at 12 p.m. Eastern. So I think that Eastern time, I think that would work well. So like Eastern New York time. I think that time would work well for most people, whether you are chiming in from, say, the UK, that would be 5 o'clock your time, or chiming in from the West Coast, and that would be like 9 a.m. your time. So I think that it works. If it's Central, it would be 11. So I think the time works because it can really support a lot of time zones. And I'd love for you to be a part of that. So if this is something that you would like to be a part of for the first gathering, I'm looking for about 5 or 6 more people. And then once I get those names for the list, if you respond right away, I'll get you added to the list. Once that happens, I'll be responding to the people who want to attend the first one with the registration link and next steps. And then for those of you who don't make it into the first round, and I'm planning on doing more of these, you will be added to my spreadsheet. It's not my email list. You'll be added to my spreadsheet, and I'll be making sure to reach out to you for the next one. Now, as we're getting ready to close out this June series, I have one more guest episode who's going to be airing this Sunday. One of the things I've really started to lean into is that when you think of what extraordinary means and what it can mean for your life, it can become heavy when it's turned into something you have to perform. When it starts to mean bigger, more visibility, more impressive, more easily understood by other people, more proof that you're doing something with your life. Maybe that's where I think so many women begin measuring themselves against a life that they never actually sat down and chose. And it's not because they're trying to be someone else. That's not always the case. But maybe because the version that gets praised the most can start to feel like the version that counts the most. But after this month, I feel even more certain that extraordinary isn't one life. It's not one model or one home, one career, one business, one income level, one rhythm, one version of success, like one type of woman who models what success looks like, what an extraordinary life looks like. It's definitely not something that someone else also that gets to define for you and then hand back as like that standard, right? Because for one woman, extraordinary may look bold. She might be going after that bigger house, that bigger business, scaling her business to multiple 7 figures. That might be the woman who decides, you know what, I just want to have a smaller 6-figure business. I'm able to now, drop my kids off at school, pick them up from school, spend time with them between, like I said, 4 and 7 with that real time where we're bonding, and then put the kids to bed and I can then have a little bit more me time. It might be a decision that changes everything that other people thought would actually stay the same, because a lot of the time people will look at you saying, what are you doing? But it's like, it's for you, right? It's what your extraordinary life is, you want it to look like. For someone else, it might look like a smaller home, a slower morning, a business, again, like that supports your life without consuming it. It might look spacious, not less ambitious, but spacious enough that you can feel yourself inside the life you're building. And someone else, it may not even look remarkable, like nothing really big has changed at all. But inside of her life, it feels good. It feels deeply honest to her. It feels deeply honest to you if that's you. That really matters, right? Because I think that sometimes life that looks extraordinary to everyone else isn't the life that lets you breathe because it's not yours. It's not what you want. And sometimes that life that would look ordinary to someone else is the actual life your body, your heart, your family, your work, your future have been asking you to stop dismissing. It's what you actually feel you want. So it's not whether your life looks extraordinary enough. It's whether the life you're building still has room for the life that you want to live, room for the work that you want to do. Yes, right? Room for your responsibilities, room for the people that you love, also room for you, not the version of you who keeps everything moving, but the version of you who has time to live inside the life that you're building. And that's where building an extraordinary life really begins, for me at least, not with a borrowed definition from someone else, but with telling myself, which I've been realizing, is telling myself the truth about what extraordinary actually means for me in this season, in the body I'm inhabiting, with my responsibilities, the desire that I have for more, for change, with a life that's still asking to be shaped with more honesty. And maybe that truth is enough for today. I truly believe that maybe right now, that's all I need to know, and that I can still continue to look at the bigger picture, and I can still continue to look for the ways to build that stability into the unknown picture, and that's okay. Everything doesn't have to change right now. But once you tell the truth about what extraordinary means to you, it becomes harder to keep building from a definition that was never fully yours. Anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for spending time with me today. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Electric acid.